Hey guys, so for today's movie review, I'm going to talk about the new Gore Verbinski film, The Lone Ranger. In this film, you guys, it's a film adaptation of the famous radio show and TV show, The Lone Ranger, where John Reed is a lawyer slash business law man who goes back to the Old West to visit his family, his brother and his uh, sister-in-law, the brother's wife, and this young boy lived there. He's going to visit them. Um, so he kind of goes along with this journey with his brother, and it's his older brother. And he's kind of a part of this group that hunts down, like most wanted criminals in the West. Things go horribly wrong. Um, he eventually meets up with a Native American spirit walker, who what he likes to be called. His name is Tonto, played by Johnny Depp. Um, so there's a very tragic event that happens with this journey that he was about to go on with the brother, and Tonto is now going to help John Reed basically become this figure called the Lone Ranger, who will take revenge on the people who have done this to him through the tragic events. And him and Tonto will travel through the West, searching for these people who were a part of this, who made this really bad thing happen. And while this is going on, they find out that the locomotive is being invented, the railroads are being established not only in the West but around the world. And there's this big rock material that's very valuable. It can purchase a country. It's even said in one scene. Um, so not only do they got to deal with these criminals that done this very horrible thing to John Reed, who became the Lone Ranger, but they also got to deal with these rocks, making sure they don't get in the wrong hands. Because if they do, this person could get a lot of money and do some very bad things with that money. Um, and so the locomotive, the invention of the locomotive plays a very important part in this film, and it's a very big contributor to many of the action scenes in this film also. So Lone Ranger, you guys, I thought it was an okay film. It's a very long film, so be warned. Give yourself a good 3 hours of time to watch the film, because it is 2.5 hours, which is still pretty long for a Disney film and just a family Western film, I guess. It's just a very long running time for a film like this. So for positives and negatives, you guys, I did think Johnny Depp's performance as Tonto in this was very bizarre, but it was very fitting for that kind of character. Um, I know there's a lot of racial controversy, with Johnny Depp not being Native American. But I thought his overall performance as Tonto, the Tonto that I remember and know of from the Lone Ranger story, through radio and TV show, from what I know of it, he does a very good job. He definitely gives an entertaining performance. So I really liked his performance as Tonto in here, because he almost kind of forms characteristics that are very memorable, like feeding the dead bird and, moving around really weird, kind of having this, like weird facial reactions a lot to a lot of things. So his performance in this film I thought was very good. Um, the action scenes, specifically like the train chase scenes, when they happen, because there's actually not a lot of them as you'd think there'd be for a film like this. When the action scenes happen in the film, it's very impressive. So if you're looking for a good action scenes that take place in the West, Lone Ranger is a very good example of that kind of a film. I really like the dark and gritty look of this film. It's definitely the look of a Lone Ranger film that I wanted Gore Verbinski to make. It's something that I wanted to see happen ever since I saw the trailers for this film. So I really like the dark and gritty look of this film. I definitely think Gore Verbinski had the right look in mind as far as what Lone Ranger should look like on film. Tom Wilkinson's lines and performance in this film are very good. He definitely, he doesn't appear a lot throughout the movie, but whenever he has lines, whenever it's coming down to his performance in the film, I actually kind of liked his character and almost wish Gore Verbinski played around with him more, because there's a lot of layering to that character. Um, he, I guess the most I can say about him without giving too much away is he's not the good guy you think he is, but he's also not quite the bad guy you think he is. But either way, his performance in this film was very good, and I wish that Gore Verbinski played around with it even more, because I liked the performance so much. Um, Certain Lone Ranger elements are explained in this film, like why Tonto is the way he is. We obviously get to see kind of the origin of the Lone Ranger, or at least the origin that these filmmakers in this film came up with for the character. So I liked that a lot of things were explained. I was kind of worried after a while that certain things were not going to get explained, but this film explains them for sure. So if you're looking for a Lone Ranger film where it kind of explains why certain things are the way they are, why the Lone Ranger has a horse named Silver and all that kind of stuff, you'll be pretty happy with this film because those kind of things do get explained in here. For negatives, you guys, this is a very slow-paced film. It is 2.5 hours, and Gore Verbinski definitely took advantage of that running time because it's a very slow paced film. It's action scene, very slow paced, action scene, very slow paced scenes again, action scene, very slow paced scenes again, action scene, and it's a very very long going movie. And I really wish the pacing of this film was much faster because I think the film would have been a much better flowing film if it did that. This film is very poorly structured. The narrative of this film is kind of old Tonto telling the story to a young boy. Um, that'll make more sense when you actually see the film, kind of how this story is told. But it's just a very poorly structured film. A lot of things interrupt the story a lot. So it's just, I really wish the film had a better organized structure to it. Um, I didn't think Armie Hammer was the greatest choice for Lone Ranger. I really think if uh, Jerry Bruckheimer, who was one of the producers of the film, and Gore Verbinski, who directed the film, just the people who had power of casting for the film. I really think if they really sat down and looked around at all the actors available to them, I think they could have found someone better than Armie Hammer. Because though I liked him in The Social Network as the Winklevoss twins, I don't think he's quite ready for a big role like this, where he's front and center, the lead title role. I like the actor, but I don't think kind of role is uh, a right fit for him. So I think a better actor would have been a better choice for the Lone Ranger. Um, Helena Bonham Carter is very underused in this film. She has a lot of power in certain things. She's kind of like this underground, has a lot of power, but not a lot of people know about it kind of thing. She helps out the Lone Ranger and Tonto in some scenes, but she's very underused. We don't get to see her a lot. Gore Verbinski definitely underplays her character, and I think even after Helena Bonham Carter sees the film, she'll probably even say herself that she wished that she had a bigger role in the film because when you see the film and see how she plays out in certain scenes, you almost wish that they gave her more to do. Um, kind of like what I was saying back with the structure and the pacing, this film is really too long. I really think this film could have been trimmed down at least a good 20 to 30 minutes. I think that would have maybe changed the pacing a little bit. I think the pacing would have been a little bit better with a quicker paced story. It's just for a film like this, it really doesn't have to be this long. 2.5 hours is a very long time to ask your audience to sit through a film, and for the story that they came up with, it just seems like it takes way too long to tell it. So I think with a much shorter film, and like I said, a good 20 to 30 minutes being cut from it, I think this film would have been told at a much quicker pace and a much better pace at that. I actually didn't like the musical score for this film. I don't know who scored the film. I don't know if Hans Zimmer did it because I know he's teamed up with Gore Verbinski quite a few times, which would be shocking because Hans Zimmer is a much better musician than whoever scored this film. Not to say that whoever scored the film has done bad with other musical scores for other films, but there's something about this score of this film that I didn't like. It just kind of felt a little generic. It felt like it was recycled from another film. It just didn't seem to be a good musical score for a Lone Ranger movie. And so, with that being said, I wish a different musical score was created for this film. Also, the villain of this film is very generic. We've seen the golden teeth, cut up faced villain before. We've seen that kind of bandit in the Old West in several different kind of Old West films. Really generic villain. I really wish they chose a better villain and a much more interesting villain with more layering, more depth, with a different approach that we haven't seen from an Old West film yet. So thumbs down once again about the villain of the film. I really think with a better script once again, I think this film would have been a much better film. So Lone Ranger, you guys, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. It's an okay film. There's a lot of good things about it, but there's also a lot of bad things about it. Um, I don't plan on owning this film. I really don't think it's that good. I would be shocked if some other people do want to own this film because I really don't think it's that good. It's definitely not the next Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not the next Rango because both of those films are great Gore Verbinski films if you haven't seen them, specifically the first two Pirates of the Caribbean films. So Lone Ranger, you guys, it's okay. It's a good one-watch film. I guarantee you probably won't want to watch this several more times. It's a very long film, and it takes a very long time to make its point. It's an okay film. Some great action scenes are here. But like I said, with a better, it really needs to improve upon its pacing and its structure because it's not quite the Lone Ranger film that we probably could have had if those things were improved upon. So 7.5 out of 10 for me, you guys. An okay film. Um, Nothing too spectacular here, though.